Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm your host, Amanda Lamb. In today's deep dive conversation with WRAL's Hidden History reporter, Heather Leah, we're talking about another fun summer excursion, something a lot of people might be interested in, North Carolina's very own Fountain of Youth. Yes, it's right here in a park in Fuquay-Varina. Now, I'm personally interested in this, Heather. I'm just going to go bathe in it. Welcome to the program.
Thanks. Yeah, I definitely loved visiting it myself.
I'm sure. So, you have covered so much of the history in North Carolina, and this is just a really cool and interesting spot. It's a mystical healing spring. It was first discovered in the 1800s. And it's kind of hidden in plain sight. It's just right in the middle of this public park. So first of all, let's just set the scene for our listeners. Where is it and what does it look like?
So it is, again, it's kind of right there in downtown Fuquay-Varina. There's a museum right down the road from it that'll tell you the history of the park. And yeah, it's at the Mineral Springs Park. And when you go there, you really wouldn't necessarily realize that you're looking at such a historically significant place. On top of that, one of the main reasons that Fuquay-Varina is there today is because of this spring.
So it's very subtle. I saw the picture of it online in your reporting. It's just, this really pretty kind of beautiful spring that runs through this park and has like a little bridge over it. It just really looks like a nice spot to hang out.
Yeah,
you would never know the history. So let's talk about the history of this. How this was initially discovered on private farmland, correct? And, and how did they find it? And how did it kind of manifest from this just little babbling brook to something more significant?
Yeah, so, at the time it was 1858, and there was a Revolutionary War veteran, William Fuquay, and it was either him or his son or his grandson. One of his family members was out there working. Historians still debate who discovered it exactly, but someone was out there working on the field of this farm, and they just found a spring, and they thought it was regular drinking water, which was valuable. And they hung a little gourd by the tree so that people could just come by and drink. But something strange began to happen as people began to come by and just take a sip from the gourd, take a sip from the spring. They started to claim that they were being healed from various ailments.
What kind of ailments?
Yeah, so there's actually an exhibit at the museums, and one of the claims from the era says, "For complaints of the kidneys, liver, and stomach, the water has afforded complete relief. Many cases of heart trouble and indigestion have disappeared entirely." People also said that there was someone nearly bent double with rheumatism, and after a few weeks of drinking from the spring, felt perfectly well.
Oh, well, that's a pretty good endorsement. Well, we will be right back after the break. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. So we're talking about this magical spring that was discovered on a farm in Fuquay-Varina. And as this news started to travel about the fact that this spring might have mystical healing powers, what started to happen? Because I know there are some pictures you mentioned of just people really flocking to this site.
Yeah, it became a very important piece of tourism for this tiny little town, Fuquay. And they even, at the same time, the train was being built through that area as well. So these things happened around the same exact time. They even had advertisements that you could take a day trip by train and visit these healing springs. From Raleigh, you could go all the way out to Fuquay and take a sip of the springs. Taking the waters was one of the ways that they would refer to it. So it really helped bring people to this little town that people wouldn't have otherwise known about, and they'd come by railroad. And so around the springs, hotels would spring up, shops would spring up, anything that would, give these tourists something else to do while they were in town. And some of those places are still there today, and you can actually go stay in some of these locations by the springs, just like they did a long time ago.
So in some ways, the town was developed around the springs, and really the economy was developed by the fact that so many people were coming to partake of this.
Exactly. They would have holidays built around this where you could come out there for the 4th of July. You could have a picnic and drink from the spring. It became quite an attraction And there's really some reason to believe that there was some truth to the spring helping people at the time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. So, I mean, obviously this sounds a little bit like a legend. And, hearing people say, oh, I was healed by drinking this water sounds a little bit like, well, they probably just imagined that. But was there any proof to this? Obviously, people believed this to be true.
Yeah, so the water has been tested. And it kind of makes sense that maybe it did heal some ailments. Now, I'm sure some of this was mental. As people spread the word and legends, they started to feel better just because they were drinking the water. But the water has been shown to have potassium chloride, sodium bicarbonate, magnesium bicarbonate, magnesium sulfate, calcium bicarbonate, aluminum oxides, silica, iron. And you got to think about, a lot of that stuff is stuff that you might take nowadays if you had a stomach ache, right? Some of these things will help your stomach. They will help aches and pains. Magnesium is something that, a lot of people today will take for muscle aches and cramps. I believe it's sodium bicarbonate. I'm not an expert, but I think you take when your stomach's hurting. So a lot of these are things that you can take today and will help with things. And then add that to the fact that it's the 1800s, early 1900s. People maybe don't have access to all of the diverse foods and vitamins that they might need. They don't have
supplements.
There wasn't
like over-the-counter. Pepsid did not exist. There was not over-the-counter things. So this may really have healed some people.
Yeah, I would think it probably did. Yeah.
Do people still partake of the water today, do you know? Or is it still more of a legend now, more of a historical thing?
So I have heard that you can partake of the water. I would not suggest you just go out there and drink it. But I have heard that maybe they've had events and things like that where they'll let people come and take a sip. So I wouldn't just go drink it.
Sure.
And certainly don't go drink out of the creek. The spring is not the creek. The spring is the thing beside the creek.
Gotcha. So tell people, if they want to view this today, how they can do that.
Yeah, well, if you go to WRAL.com and you search Hidden History, you can find the story. But then if you want to just go and see the park, it's the Fuquay Mineral Spring Park. And it's open to the public, just like a regular park. And then right down the street, if you want to learn more about it, there's the museums. And the museums they have like a little schoolhouse that you can go around in. They've got the museum ground. They've got an old tobacco barn, a vintage playhouse, and a real train caboose. So you can go to the museum and explore a lot of other cool things just right down the road.
So it sounds like a very fun summer excursion.
Yeah.
Well, Heather, thank you so much for sharing another fascinating look at our hidden history. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. If you'd like to hear more about things to do, places to visit, and restaurants to enjoy in North Carolina, check out WRAL Out and About, a weekly podcast from WRAL News. Find WRAL Out and About in your podcast app. Thanks again for listening.